You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 64. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
We hope everybody out there is having a great holiday 2014 as we return with our 64th episode of the Tricorder Transmissions. This is the Tholian Web. We are your hosts, Jeff Hewlett.
And Craig Cohen.
How's it going, Craig?
It's going really well, man. It's been a great couple of weeks leading up to the holidays.
Yeah, so good holiday so far. I think we just passed Christmas. It's actually the day after Christmas. We're recording this. And hopefully, Craig, you had a good time with friends and family on Christmas Day?
I did. It was a nice, relaxing day as always, and got some nice goodies. And as always, I got to hang up some Trek ornaments on the tree.
Spectacular. Sounds really cool. Yeah, same here. Everything was good, and I know we usually don't delve into the personal stuff, but I just figured we would connect with the audience a little over the holidays. We hope everybody out there is having a great holiday season and is going to have a safe and happy New Year.
Yes.
Yeah. So news this week. A couple of things. One is a kind of a bizarre news item. This is a retail thing, and appears there's a new 2-disc DVD original series set that's coming out on March 17th.
What is it, like a best of?
I guess you can say that. It's entitled Captain Kirk's Boldest Missions. And I'm a little bit scratching my head on this one. I don't know who this is aimed at. It's they list a couple of episodes here in the press text. And Corbin Might Maneuver, City on the Edge, Doomsday Machine. There's eight total episodes, and it's going to be a value-priced DVD set. But I'm really not sure who they're aiming this at. I mean, I would think that original series fans who might be interested in something like this probably already have all of this stuff.
Yeah, but you're going to get those diehard fans that buy anything that's officially released.
That's true.
So I think this is really marketed at diehards and casuals. You know, you're going to get that casual fan who says, "Oh, I really like the City on the Edge of Forever or the Doomsday Machine. I remember watching that. I don't own any Trek, and this is value price, so I can walk out of here not spending a ton of money."
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, that's a good call. That's a good call. I guess I'm thinking of it from our perspective and people we know's perspectives who already have at least the DVDs and or the Blu-rays, and well, hopefully some people will pick that up and maybe convert some new original series fans out there.
Yeah, that's always cool when new people get turned on to the show.
Yeah, another bit of retail-ish type news. There appear to be some original series Star Trek paper clips coming out. Yeah, we're really scraping the bottom for news here, people. In the second quarter of 2015, look like the Enterprise and the Starfleet insignia, and a set of, I guess, they're big paper clips, and one set of clips is going to be about $20.
Wow!
So you got to really want to clip some papers together to buy these, but they look kind of cool. So hopefully, maybe we'll see how many paper clips are actually in this set, and maybe like 100 or something. It might be worth it. But all right, and I guess the third and final piece of news, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I have a feeling that Craig and I will be bitterly divided, and I don't want the show to end because we can't agree on this.
Uh-oh.
But the new director of Star Trek 3 has apparently been chosen.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to jump out the window and run across the road and hopefully get hit by a truck and not have to see this movie. My stock in this just went way down. So, and I'm sure yours went through the roof.
Well, yeah, it's director Justin Lin, who came on board the Fast and the Furious franchise way back in the third film, which was Tokyo Drift, which was sort of the first Fast and the Furious film without Paul Walker or Vin Diesel. And then he ended up staying around for 4, 5, and 6. And he exited, he wasn't able to do 7 because the turnaround time was too quick. He didn't feel he'd have time to prep it. And then, of course, Paul Walker died and plans for 7 changed. I think Justin Lin is a competent, very competent action director. These new Star Trek films are very much action oriented, so I don't have any reason to pause on that front. And I think he's got a pretty good handle on just overall storytelling. So depending on the script he gets and how much work he does with it, I don't know. I think you might be surprised, Jeff.
Well, he's got 0 sci-fi directing cred, so I'm a little concerned there.
But come on,
I don't really want to see spaceship star chases for hours on end, and I just, it's not my kind of thing. I mean, maybe I will fly out to Vegas and I'll go see it with Vernon so that we can both throw our hands up and walk out together in frustration.
But I mean, is that the fault of the director, or is it the fault of the studio producing the movie and deciding they want to make a certain type of movie? Because I mean, if you look at those the JJ movie, the 2 JJ movies, those are very much movies that are action driven.
Of course, they're action driven, but at least they were still kind of rooted in the original series. They kind of kept true to the characters, and I don't know if he's necessarily Lin is necessarily geared well towards this type of a project, because I mean, I guess if they're trying to drive it in the direction of generating new fans and not really caring much about the original series or old Star Trek fans, I guess maybe it's a good idea. But I don't know. It's almost like putting Michael Bay on Star Trek for me. I just don't see it as being a good thing. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I'm willing to be proven wrong on this, but my expectations just went through the floor. So
sure, but I think if you're coming from the viewpoint where the previous director, Robert Orkey, had 0 directing experience, and moved on from the project for various reasons, to get a guy in who, at least I think from the studio's perspective, is going to be able to bring in a movie on budget and with a level of competency that you really need for a big budget movie like these. And unfortunately or fortunately, that is what Star Trek movies now are. They are big budget tentpole movies.
I guess so. I would have rather see Jonathan Frakes get in this, or another director who at least had some Star Trek cred in his past, or at least had some sort of a love for the material, instead of just an action director who's just going to come in and do what the studio says.
Yeah, but you know what? I liken this to sort of the James Bond run in the 90s, where, it really started with the Pierce movies, where you had, the Golden Eye and Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough. Every movie brought in guys that had really cut their teeth making action films. And not to say that Bond movies hadn't done that in the past, because of course those are some of the most spectacular action movies of their time. But it seemed like with each new movie, they brought in another big action director. And I think with the production team that was in place on the Bond movies, and the scripting team that was always pretty much the same, they got some pretty good results. So I think if all the other departments do the job they're supposed to do, this could turn out to be pretty surprising. If one department doesn't hold their weight, it could be a huge mess.
Yeah. I don't recall any of those 90s era Bond films being listed amongst the best Bond films of all time. So, some of them were enjoyable, sure, but I've heard a lot of negative criticism of those Bond films. So
yeah, but I don't know. I think you'd find GoldenEye in a lot of top 10s.
From the video game standpoint, maybe. I don't remember that being listed. Well, maybe amongst yours, but it was okay. I mean, I'm not saying they were bad movies. I enjoyed them, but I don't think they were, among the annals of Bond films. And I'm hoping that Star Trek can actually kind of come back and become a really good franchise again. And
sort of like Casino Royale.
Yeah, I thought at least Casino Royale was a really good Bond flick.
Mm-hmm.
So
but not to get into a whole side thing here, because you know what a James Bond fan I am. But if you stack up GoldenEye or Tomorrow Never Dies against stuff like Moonraker or A View to a Kill, or even like Live and Let Die, or You Only Live Twice, I think those movies stand above those movies I mentioned. And I'm not one of those guys who will, violently defend every Sean Connery entry, because I think he had two clunkers in his run. So I don't know. We agree to disagree, and I can't wait to have our Star Trek 3 discussions when that movie comes out. And the exciting thing is, it will be coming out in 2016. So they will have a movie in theaters to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, which is the most important thing that we've been talking about.
Yes. Well, hopefully. Yeah. Keep our fingers crossed.
Well, didn't they announce a release date of like July 2016 or something?
That's not that far away. I mean, they don't have a heck of a lot. I think we haven't even really started on anything yet. So, yeah, filming and editing takes quite a while, and I think they're still having script issues. So, they better move, or else this could be a rush job. But then again, Fast and Furious, right? He could pull it off.
Yeah.
All right. Enough of that. So, let's get on to the Tholian Web, which is our commentary for this week on the Tricorder Transmissions. And are you ready to jump into this, Craig?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, Tholian Web aired on November 15th of 1968. Remaster March 31st of 2007.
And from the NBC press release that was issued on October 21st, 1968, we have Mr. Spock and Dr. McCoy attempt to locate Captain Kirk's body, which fades in and out of view in space while the Enterprise is gradually engulfed in a trap in the Tholian Web on NBC television network Star Trek Colorcast of Friday, November 15th.
All right. We will start our scene-specific commentary. Cue up your DVDs, your Blu-rays, your Netflix, your YouTubes, or what have you. We will be starting in 3, 2, 1. All right. Here we are again. The Enterprise coming towards the camera. So this episode, like many others from prior seasons, is the music is retracked from other episodes, and this episode in particular has some interesting reuse of musical cues from seasons 1 and 2, I think.
Yeah, they've got some of that really eerie, cool 60s sounding, real cinematic sounding stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that they have these recognizable cues that have become kind of famous in the annals of original series history. And I love the fact that I can pick up on them whenever I'm watching these episodes, and kind of throws me back into other ones. And
right.
So we've got a case of another Starfleet ship that's gone missing.
The Defiant.
Yeah, the Defiant, 3 weeks prior, which I believe is the ship that Worf flies, isn't it, later on?
Yeah, but it's not I guess it's not a Constitution class vessel in DS9.
No, it's a smaller.
It's like one of those one of those battleships or whatever.
Yeah, don't they during the opening battle sequence of First Contact beam Worf out of that ship because it was being blown up by the Borg?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a whole tough little ship exchange.
Yeah,
and Worf's like little. Yeah. So yeah, I guess they reused that name for a new version of this ship. I guess this one, as we know, if you're an Enterprise watcher, this the Defiant winds up in the Mirror universe.
Yes.
Yeah, and it gets commandeered by some of the evil Enterprise crew members down the road. So this episode is actually neat because it was not originally a prequel to an Enterprise episode, but it was appropriated as a prequel to an Enterprise, I think 4th season episode.
Yeah, possibly.
And it was In a Mirror Darkly, I believe, which was
we talked about on the supplemental for Mirror Mirror.
Yes, we did. So jump back and listen to that one if you haven't heard that yet. Some interesting conversation, a little bit that pertains to this episode.
Yeah, it's always fun when the the future series would sort of find ways to work within the confines of the original series. And I got to say that we've talked about season 3 here a lot, and we talked about it with Mark Cushman about the budget limitations on this season.
Mm-hmm.
But we're getting the introduction here, are we not, of these environmental suits?
Yes, and these were they had suits prior to this, but these are the suits that wound up getting reused again later on in season 3, and there's a lot of information on these suits in particular in Mark's season 3 book. One interesting tidbit, I'm not going to reveal everything that's said about them, but the guys were actually sewn into those suits.
Wow.
They were so late in getting those suits ready. They weren't even ready for the first day of shooting until later on in the day, and they don't have zippers or buttons or anything. So if the actors had to go to the bathroom, you had to unsew them from the suit and then sew them back in. Yeah, pretty fascinating stuff. And like I said, this is you're going to hear a lot of shameless plugs for Mark's book now that we've had a chance to look at it, and that is just one of a lot of really cool details about this episode that's in that book. So
yeah, those plugs are totally warranted, because it really is an excellent reference guide, historical look at, whatever you want to call it. It is really essential reading for, I think, anybody that has gone down the rabbit hole far enough to listen to our commentaries for these episodes. Those books are definitely going to be in your wheelhouse.
Oh, for sure. And I have a couple of little other factoids I'll be mentioning from the book as we go through this commentary. But pretty cool little introduction here with the title cast over the fluctuating green-looking ship.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of dialogue coming up here that I think is very, very interesting, and it's a continuity mishap, I believe. We can probably argue it, actually. But as McCoy is examining some of these dead crew members, Chekhov says, and I think we've mentioned this before, has there ever been a mutiny
yes.
prior to this? And Spock said there's no record of there ever having been a mutiny, but we actually witnessed a mutiny aboard the Enterprise in the Paradise Syndrome.
Yes.
Back from season 1. And they actually call it a mutiny in that episode directly.
Yeah.
So interesting little bit of a continuity mishap there.
Yeah, that jumped out at me, and I said, well, maybe their definition is different than my definition.
Yeah, perhaps. Or it could be attributed to the fact that we had a pair of freelance writers on this episode.
Yes.
Who, this was actually their first writing gig.
Yeah, and that was the husband and wife team of Judy Burns and Chet Richards. And this is Chet Richards' only screenwriting credit, but his wife was a pretty active writer through the 1980s. She wrote for The $6 Million Man, Vegas, and another William Shatner series, T.J. Hooker.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Nice little link there. And at the time Judy and Chet wrote this script, they were college students looking for a way to make money to go on an African trip.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so this was actually Judy Burns' first script sale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And she was actually on set to watch the filming of this episode.
Wow, I think that's pretty rare for writers back then on this series.
Yeah, her and Chet, they were both on set. Although Chet, I believe, was had to be cast aside for a while. There was some disagreements going on, and it was better that he not be there. But there's more interesting notes about that.
So do you want to talk at all about this sort of redressed Enterprise for the Defiant?
Yeah. It's pretty cool that they were able to do that. And you know, this was more the budgetary restraints that were heavily imposed in the third season. And they had to find creative ways to create a whole other ship out of the existing sets of the Enterprise that they had already built. So, you know, it's mostly, you know, crew members' bodies strewn around. Those don't look like very comfortable ways to die either. I mean, you're kind of throwing a strewn all over the engineering equipment there. And I love the close-up of Chekhov here, and you can see his name emblazoned on the front of his spacesuit. And you notice, Craig, I don't know if you noticed this, but Kirk's spacesuit, actually all the spacesuits, I believe, Chekhov's hand's in the way right now, but they all have communicators built in to the spacesuits.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. That it kind of reminds me a little bit of a Next Gen where they had their, everybody had a communicator right on their chest there, their insignia.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty neat. They thought to build the communicators in instead of having them pull a communicator up and stick it in front of the helmet, right?
Yeah.
So pretty neat stuff. So any notes or thoughts from you on the redressed Enterprise?
No, it's just one of those things where I wish I had a little bit more of a detail-oriented eye when it comes to the Enterprise to really notice the differences. This is almost like an episode where I wish I could sit down maybe and watch this with Donnie, who's been mapping out the various versions of the Enterprise in the digital realm.
Yeah, I mean, he would be a good expert to talk about. Maybe we can reference him later on. We can have him come on and talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, maybe this season 3 wrap up.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Be a great idea. So McCoy has just surmised that the crew killed each other, and in some sort of a murderous rampage and another mental illness or space illness type scenario.
Yeah.
And some cool photographic effects going on here with McCoy's hand going through the crew guy on the floor and through the table here.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty cool. For back in the day, I imagine seeing something like this on television in the late 60s was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, totally. And this is technically was probably very, 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 tedious to do, where you have to make sure that everybody's in the exact right location and you're doing double exposures and stuff like that. So I'd imagine it was incredibly challenging. And it was. I'm sure it was definitely gratifying to sit down, having worked on it, and watch it on TV and see how effective it turned out.
For sure. And I think later on, as we get into the other more difficult effects of the Tholian Web itself, there'll be even more to talk about from a visual perspective. But of course, we have the transporter is down again. So once again, we have another convenience technology conveniently disabled.
Yes.
Making for a setup here by which Kirk gets left behind on the fading Defiant ship. And I think we frequently talk about all of the time bombs that these episodes set up for us. And I think this episode may have the most, or tied for the most, time bombs thrown at us of any episode, because there turns out to be, I think, 4 or 5 time bombs going at the same time.
Yeah, especially when you have the Tholian, the web starting to be constructed.
Yeah, you have the web being constructed. You have Kirk's oxygen running out. You have the Enterprise itself is disintegrating. You have the mental illness rampaging across the Enterprise. So you have all of these different, time constraints that are imposed throughout this episode. The high tension by the time you get to the resolution at the end. Yeah,
and now we are about to see pretty much the last real acting moments of this episode until the end for William Shatner, for Kirk.
Yeah, he winds up being out of the episode for the most part. And originally in the original script, it wasn't Shatner.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it wasn't Shatner, but I'm not going to delve into that because I want to leave some mystery for you guys who may purchase Mark's book. But there's a whole section about the original version of the script, so definitely check that out. And
I mean the main thing here is you have your star, who is now 10 minutes, 12 minutes into the episode is pretty much gone.
Yeah, you see him floating around here and there, but that's about it. This is it for him right now. Until the end of the episode, really.
I couldn't remember another episode that featured so little Captain Kirk.
Yeah, this may be his briefest episode of the entire series. So
yeah, because even episodes like the Galileo 7, which sort of has something in common with this, in terms of the tension between McCoy and Spock. But even in that episode, they were cutting back to the Enterprise enough that you got to see, Kirk.
Yeah, you're seeing that the situation from both sides. You're seeing
Yeah.
it from Kirk's side and from Spock's side, but in this one you're really only seeing they don't flash into the other universe and show you what's going on with Kirk over there. All you see is little images of him floating around in space. So a little bit strange. And I thought about this while I was watching this episode to research for this commentary track. Notice that Scotty says he can only take 3 out of the 4 of them. I thought to myself, why wouldn't he do 2 and 2?
Yeah.
You would think 2 would take less energy, be less drain on the transporter, right? And that would less chance of it blowing out or whatnot. And then potentially, well, I guess maybe Kirk's order was for him to take the 3 of the other ones and then take Kirk last. So it gives Kirk a hero moment.
Yes.
But I thought it would have been interesting if they'd have done it 2 by 2 and maybe left, Kirk and Chekhov behind.
Yeah.
Or something of that nature, because you really need Spock and McCoy back on the Enterprise to make the story work. But they could have left Chekhov behind and had 2 of them floating around.
Yeah.
In space.
And now we've got sort of Chekhov being the voice of the viewer.
Yeah, actually, that's a good observation. I didn't think of that.
He's asking, what's so special about this region of space?
Causing Spock to have to explain to the viewers exactly what the interface of 2 universes is, because I imagine this concept is pretty lofty.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty maybe even tough to understand for some fledgling sci-fi geeks out there without actually really listening to Spock's explanation and thinking about it for a little while. So essentially, what we have are our 2 alternate universes, and we've seen another universe in this series before with the Mirror universe, and you also had, if you could understand the Lazarus episode, there were 2 universes in that were flipping back and forth. So we've been introduced to a concept similar before, but Spock has to really explain exactly what's going on here, because we see a ship phasing in and out of a universe, and how could Kirk phase through and possibly survive and come back later on, and so it's a little bit heady.
Yeah, and we just had Spock utilize the nerve pinch on Chekhov, who I gotta say, Chekhov always has great freak out moments when he's given them.
Yeah, did you notice the little overdubbed scream there?
Oh, I didn't catch that on.
There was one quick shot of Chekhov's face where the scream was actually overdubbed. It was the second scream, not the third one. So pretty interesting that they overdubbed it. They have a Chekhov scream, I guess. It's a shame that the Wilhelm scream caught on and the Chekhov scream didn't catch on.
It's not too late.
Yeah, I guess not. We could get it and throw it in our episodes and see if anybody picks up on it. So I guess a lot of this episode is McCoy and Spock at each other's throats.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is you have McCoy is very much sort of driven to move on.
Yeah, and that's usually not his thing. It's a kind of a role reversal.
Yeah, because we've had other instances where sort of Spock was given the captain's chair, if you will, and not to say Vulcans can be anxious, but seemed anxious to maintain his position. So it was interesting here, like you said, to see the role reversal where McCoy is ready to throw in the towel and say, well, the captain's gone. And Spock says, well, no, we have to play this through till the end and, make sure we play every card we can before we fold. Yeah,
it's a great option. I'm glad you brought that up in such detail, because I was kind of put off by the fact that McCoy is giving up immediately.
Yeah.
Without even so much as a second attempt. I mean, they tried to transport Kirk and they weren't able to get him. He's caught in the transporter beam, supposedly. But McCoy is ready to just warp out of there.
Yeah, and I guess that's McCoy's, as the ship's doctor, his concern for this sort of, I guess, virus that could spread, this mental illness virus. And maybe that's really, he's really truly thinking of the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few or the one.
Perhaps so. But I think we can also look at it from a third angle, which is that they are all currently being minutely affected by this mental illness, causing them to have all of these little altercations and maybe not act like themselves. But
Right.
so here's the introduction of a Tholian in the Star Trek universe. The first time we actually see, well, the face of a Tholian. What you wouldn't know from seeing this, though, is that they are one of very few non-humanoid Star Trek alien species. And you know how fond I am of non-humanoid alien species in Star Trek. So they're actually insectoid. They look kind of like fiery spiders or some sort of trying to think of a good word to describe. They're almost they look like large fiery insects. But this Tholian is actually a helmet.
Yeah,
it's a static helmet with some film color effects overlaid on it.
Yeah, and if you do want to see a full-bodied Tholian, you can watch that Enterprise episode through a mirror darkly.
Yeah, and FYI, that the background behind the Tholian is crumpled tinfoil.
You know what? It totally looks like it.
It's crumpled tinfoil, so it's a pretty cool effect. I can imagine that was probably pretty freaky looking back in the 60s when this aired.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Looks a little bit weird now, but it's... Now look at that interesting medical contraption. That's the first time I think we've seen anything like that being used.
Yeah, and this guy's shaking something off.
Yeah, and this is another use of that weird fisheye type, handheld camera angle.
Yeah.
To show the perspective of the crew members who are starting to suffer from this brain disorder from the phasing.
Yes.
That's going on. So another interesting note about the Tholians in this episode, if you'll notice that once again, most aliens in the original series are hostile. Now, the Tholians are hostile, but they're actually quite amenable. Oh, interesting. You can see obvious stunt doubles there, by the way, during this fight scene.
Yeah, but you got to respect the McCoy really holding his own.
Yeah, McCoy's actually fighting in this scene. So in the past, we've seen him have some issues, and Chapel's finally going to get into the fray. But I thought it was interesting that the Tholians were giving the Enterprise the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
And agreeing to wait the 2-ish hours to see if the Defiant were to reappear, and therefore, Spock really would be on a rescue mission, as he told them. But
yeah, you have to wonder if that was the fact that they were dealing with a Vulcan who they might have some experience with.
Yeah.
As opposed to if the roles were reversed and it was Kirk pleading for some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting that later on, there's a line that's uttered from Spock when the Tholians decide to actually attack that it's almost an acknowledgement that at least he or his people have had interaction with the Tholians before.
Right.
And, none of the Enterprise crew looked very surprised at the appearance of a Tholian, so perhaps we are to believe that they've encountered them before, the Federation has encountered them before.
Right.
And Spock actually said that, according to the Federation, the area of space that they're currently in is free space. So that the Federation's been there before, and the Tholians are now claiming that it's their space. They've laid claim to it. So we have to imagine that they've occupied the same space prior.
Yes.
To this. So interesting. And I guess the mental breakdown of the crew of the Enterprise is the third ticking time bomb that we've had introduced to us in this episode so far. So fascinating that we're adding more and more tension as the episode goes on.
Yeah, and McCoy's explaining that it's not a disease that is transferred from person to person. It's actually transmitted via the space that they're occupying. Yeah,
it's affecting the molecular structures of the brains of the people on the ship. And that makes you wonder if Spock would be affected in the same way.
Yeah.
I would imagine it would affect him somehow.
Yeah, but you'd think maybe his constitution would make it the process would take longer to get to him.
Yeah, I would think so. So Tholians are now attacking. We've got some shots being fired, and it looks like Spock has a big decision to make, whether to return fire or attempt to escape from this situation. So another tension-building moment here where leading to another altercation between Spock and McCoy, who once again happens to be out of sickbay where you'd think he would be concentrating most of his time to try to figure out the solution to this mental illness problem.
Yes.
Yeah. So now we've got the Tholians are radio silent, and here we are, McCoy berating Spock yet again. This happens a lot in this episode.
Yeah, this is pretty much, I think, probably the peak moment, though. I mean, where McCoy's really agitated by the fact that, they've been put in a really bad situation that could have been avoided.
True. Interesting, no use of photon torpedoes here either. It's they phasered the Tholian ship that just kind of drifts off into space. It's not destroyed. They don't go for the kill. They just kind of let it float off into space.
Right.
So one would wonder, I guess that's the Federation way. They're not going to attempt to kill the Tholians unless they have to, but this was just to disable the ship. But now during the exchange, the Enterprise is completely disabled, and Scotty claims that he can't repair it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
How often does Scotty throw his hands up and say, there's nothing I can do? It's not very often. Although he does it in this episode a couple times.
Yeah.
So a lot of doom and gloom. This is a downer episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, this could have been a fitting final episode if they changed the ending.
Yeah. If they blew up the ship and that was the end of the entire crew, they could have saved Desilu a lot of money.
Oh my God.
Oh man, or Paramount rather, by the time this was made. But now here's an interesting remastered effect. So we're seeing the beginning of the Tholian Web being made. So you have these two triangular shaped ships linking from the backs of the two ships linking together and then coming apart to form a beam of some sort, and which makes Uhura rise out of her chair.
Yeah.
And question what it is. Spock eyebrows. And in the original version of this episode, this was not done with CG, of course. This was done by etching on the actual film.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that effect itself was, for the time, was very impressive and very time-consuming to create. And I believe
because you're going through frame by frame, physically altering the negative.
Yep, I believe the gentleman's name was Mike Miner.
Okay.
His name, who did the visual effects for this episode, and it was a hell of a feat for back then, and quite impressive technically. And I believe this episode won some sort of an award, didn't it?
Oh, okay. I believe it.
Yeah. All right. So Spock, here's doom and gloom. So we've got yet another time bomb. The Tholians are now building a web, and if they complete the web, the Enterprise will never make it home.
Yeah.
So yet another bomb. So my goodness, how are they going to get out of all of these different scenarios that are stacking up upon them?
Mm-hmm. And now this is a room that I don't think we've seen in since season 1, maybe? Or maybe we saw this on Journey to Babel?
Trying to think. I remember seeing this it was in the wedding scene.
Okay.
In the Romulan episode, remember?
Yeah, and I thought maybe we might have seen this in The Conscience of the King.
Oh, perhaps so, yeah.
Because I wasn't sure where they were actually staging the play in that episode.
Good call. I'll have to look that up. This is the ship's chapel, I guess, now. And this is, I guess we are supposed to understand that this is Captain Kirk's funeral?
I guess they're letting the crew know that he's done.
Yeah, very interesting. And Spock, I guess his first officer, is tasked with eulogizing Captain Kirk, but there's nothing actually on the podium. There's no paper there, no screen or anything. So he's going to go off the top of his head here. And I think, not to take away anything from Mr. Spock, and I think Spock is awesome. He's my favorite character, but he's a terrible eulogizer. Absolutely terrible eulogizer.
Yeah.
So it just pretty much consists of Spock giving the crew the rundown of everything that's happened up to this point and the fact that the captain is no longer in existence. And then he kind of tells them, well, listen, you're going to have to all go and think about this on your own time and in your own way.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. And he's kind of defending himself and his decisions to fire on the Tholian ship and disable the Tholian ship. And This is weird. It's kind of like a half eulogy and half making sure that they understand why he did what he did and kind of putting up a defense for himself, but it's kind of thrown off by another bout of insanity from yet another crew member.
Yeah.
Another unnamed crew member, by the way. Mm-hmm. So Chekhov being the only named crew member who actually suffers from this.
Yeah, and it seems like there's an incredible lack of crew members in this room.
Yeah, wouldn't you think a ship-wide announcement would have made a much better way of letting everybody know instead of just telling this group of people and letting it disseminate?
Yeah, unless it's in close, like it's being broadcast closed circuit.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, standing room only in this one though. You got people standing in the back there. I always love these scenes though with a lot of unnamed crewmen and women, just a bunch of extras. You wonder where they rounded all these people up from.
Yeah,
and they had all of these extra uniforms laying around that would fit them all. So fascinating that they had all of those budgetary issues, but they were still able to round up that many extras. So that's a heck of a lot of people in that room.
Yeah.
And of course, Bones stays behind.
Yeah, and this is a great scene for the remastering. If you see the colors behind Spock, that sort of orange, the way that pops, and that deep blue behind McCoy, just both wonderful sort of representations of what this restoration really did for this series.
True, and now that you mentioned that, I was wondering if it was interesting that McCoy, who is the aggressor in this conversation, had blue behind him, while Spock, who was kind of more of the even keel guy, had red behind him. And it would have been interesting to have it the other way around.
Reversed, yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't ask director Herb Wallerstein or Stein. He died age 59 in 1985, and he had a pretty interesting career because he worked as a second unit or assistant director, a production manager, as well as a producer. But he did direct multiple episodes of several TV series, including Iron Horse, Gunsmoke, The Partridge Family, Happy Days, Petrocelli, which we've mentioned, and Wonder Woman. And he directed 4 episodes of Star Trek total all this season, and will next see his work on Whom Gods Destroy.
Yes. And interesting enough, since we're talking about directors, this episode actually did have 2 directors.
Oh,
One was uncredited because he was fired partway through, and that was Ralph Sineski.
Oh, wow, okay. So was that his final work for Star Trek?
Yes, he was let go I think on the second or third day of production because he was behind, and Paramount had imposed a very strict time limit on the amount of shooting time you could have for an episode, and because he was looking like as if he was going to run over, I guess there was a dismissal that happened. Lots more details, of course, in the book, Mark's book. So I don't want to run it all down for you, but. Interesting that some scenes, especially the ones with the spacesuits, were all done by Sineski.
Okay.
And the rest of the episode was done by Wallerstein.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Oh, and before they get to the reading of Kirk's final orders, I thought this was a very neat little tidbit about the spacesuits. McCoy's spacesuit from this episode was sold in October of 2006 for, do you have any idea how much?
2006, McCoy's spacesuit. I am going to say $78,000.
That is a very good guess, but you're slightly off. It was $120,000 US.
Okay, wow.
Can you believe it?
I can.
That's a lot of money, man. That's a mortgage on a small house.
Yeah, it's funny. Kudos for whoever bought that, and it's an incredible piece to have displayed in your house. But I know I've made certain purchases in my life where I've made the purchase, I've gotten the item home, and I've looked at it, and I've just felt empty.
Buyer's remorse.
Yeah, and like I said, good on them. I mean, that's got to be an incredible piece, and a really great conversation starter.
Oh, I'd love to have that in the corner of the room.
Right?
Yeah, right next to the Christmas tree. Question I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
I find this very off-putting. Did you notice that McCoy always seems to assume that Spock has some nefarious reason for wanting Kirk's command?
Yes.
All the time. And in this episode, even more acutely, he just kind of assumes that, Spock doesn't care. Almost like, he wanted Kirk out of the way.
Yeah.
So that he could take over. And I heard Spock say in so many episodes prior that he has no interest in Kirk's command or commanding a ship of his own.
Right.
And I don't know why they insist on writing that for him every single episode, that he has to challenge Spock on something.
Yeah. So that was just what Kirk's like his last... a tape he had put aside for when he died for McCoy and Spock to watch.
Yeah, and strangely enough, he predicts exactly what behavior is going on.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's amazing that they didn't have an opportunity to watch this prior.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, especially considering it's not really. I mean. From their perspective, he's gone. But I mean, without physical evidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's without the body. They don't have the body. They can't prove he's dead. But I think it wasn't really his last will and testament either. It was just some sage advice.
Yeah, his last vlog.
Yeah, his last vlog.
So now we get another new set, right? This is Uhura's quarters.
Yeah, you have Uhura's quarters. And
I don't think we've ever seen those, right?
Nope.
Yeah, so I don't know. For season 3, which was, lacking in the budget department, we've seen a lot of new environments.
Yes. I kind of like this too. It's obviously a redress of other quarters, but I like the fact that they put these African touches on it to make the audience understand that it is distinctly Uhura's quarters and not just random plain Jane quarters. So some personal touches there are really nice.
And there was Kirk fading in and out.
Yep.
Reaching for the camera, which is my biggest memory of this episode, as I always just have that mental image of Kirk in his environmental suit reaching out into space.
That's interesting that you say that, because my memories of this episode from when I was younger are the Tholian Web itself.
Okay.
In fact, I had almost disassociated the Kirk and the spacesuit thing from this episode when I was younger. For some reason, the two never seemed to gel together in my head until later on when I was rewatching everything and became a much more well-versed Star Trek fan. But it's interesting that the two are so disjointed. The aliens and the threat from the aliens are so removed from what's going on with Kirk. Mm-hmm. It's almost like 2 episodes in one.
Yeah.
Essentially, because you've got an introduction of a new alien race, but that introduction is overshadowed by, Captain Kirk spectrally floating around the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And being in another universe. So great view there from the top deck there of engineering. Yeah,
well, another red shirt has the madness. And the interesting thing is, McCoy thinks that Uhura is going mad, and they sort of tease that with like the little bit of discomfort she was in before she saw the captain. It's a little sort of tease, I guess, to cast doubt in the viewer's mind as to whether or not what she saw was real.
Yes, I agree, but in my my notes that I've written down for this episode, that was something that I was going to bring up, was that her symptoms, even when she's laying in sickbay, are not even remotely close to the symptoms of everyone else who's currently suffered this affliction.
Yeah, so maybe she had like a bad meal or something.
Yeah, some bad cubes from the replicator.
The other interesting thing was the way that sequence where she sees Kirk was shot. They didn't shoot it from her perspective, which would have been a dead giveaway if they had used that weird fish-eyed sort of lens. So it's an interesting directing choice, too, because you're not seeing it through her eyes, which would almost lead you to have more doubt than you do.
True.
So I think it's interesting when you can deconstruct a scene like that and interpret it different ways.
Yeah, testimonial, of course, to the way these episodes were written and produced. So very cool. And look, see here, you can see Chekhov writhing in the background.
Yeah, and she's not restrained.
She's not restrained. Well, she's got one belt across her waist there.
Yeah.
Now, Chekhov has 3 costumes in this episode.
Oh, wow.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
That's a lot of costume changes for Chekhov.
Yeah.
Pretty neat. Pretty neat. He's got the weird orderly scrubs, and sometimes you see engineering guys wearing those almost like maintenance uniforms of some sort. Yeah. And Uhura's got 3 costumes in this episode as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in this episode that would make you doubt it's a season 3 episode.
I know, you would think, and they actually did come in under budget on this episode too. So you would think with all the visual effects and all the extras and the costumes and the redressing that I guess they saved a lot of money on not having a guest star.
Yeah.
And on having freelance writers. I'm not sure if they got paid the same rate as established writers.
Yeah. Probably not if they weren't in the guild yet or anything like that. And that's the other amazing thing is in today's day and age, that wouldn't be allowed probably. Whereas even as far as the next generation actually made some careers in the sense that they openly solicited unsolicited scripts.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess the side effect of season 3, and this is not the only season 3 episode that was written by unknown writers or minor writers. So we'll see.
But didn't Trouble with Tribbles come in that way? Wasn't David Gerald was that a spec script?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to research that. But so we had a big moment there where Scotty saw Captain Kirk.
Yes, so now that kind of vindicates Uhura.
Yeah.
And McCoy will go down and free her, but not before having yet another verbal altercation here on the bridge with Spock. And McCoy even starts to get physical.
Yeah, which I don't know. I think McCoy is very, very close to stepping over a line here.
Yeah, and you notice how cool Spock is?
Yeah.
McCoy actually physically spins the chair around, and Spock just stays very stoic.
Yeah, and McCoy actually checks himself too, which almost sort of indicates that he realizes that he has to respect Spock's position.
Yeah. Now, do you think if that was just any old crew member that did that to Spock, wouldn't that be like an immediate reactionary nerve pinch?
Oh,
if you just grabbed the captain's chair and swiveled it with Spock in it, he could just grab a hold of you, you're done. And now everybody is seeing Captain Kirk.
Yeah, doing his space acting.
Yeah, I really wish I was a lip reader.
I think he's saying Spock.
I know he says the word Spock, but I can't figure out what else he's saying. There's some other words there, and I'm not sure what they are. So, I mean, does Kirk know that he's phasing into their universe? Can he see them? Or is Kirk's perspective, is he just kind of floating around in space?
I'd imagine it would work 2 ways, right?
I don't know, I guess.
He's got to be seeing something.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe he was seeing them and was calling out to them. But, it was because he's got his hands up to his face like he's trying to project his voice even further.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to discuss with the original writers of this episode. If they intended for Kirk to be seeing the people that were seeing him.
Right.
So interesting. And here's McCoy freeing Uhura, who is now not crazy, but she was crying.
Yeah.
So that's sad. That poor Uhura was in sickbay, and she was so upset. And obviously, her symptoms were nowhere near those of Chekhov or any of the other guys who've gone crazy so far. So it was almost like she was being unjustly held.
Yes.
Poor Uhura. But at any rate, you notice that Spock keeps sending McCoy to his lab?
Yes.
Isn't that like the equivalent of sending him to his room? All right, you're annoying me. Go to your room. Get out of here. And no TV for you. Go to bed without dinner. And now we're in Spock's quarters, of all places.
Yeah.
So we're seeing 2 crew members' quarters in this episode. And we're still trying to get Kirk back now. The quest to get Captain Kirk back is renewed, so that everybody has seen him, or all the major characters have seen him. I wonder if any of the unknown characters that roaming the ship had seen him as well.
Oh wow!
You're sitting in the John, taking a space poop, and Captain Kirk's foot kind of slides under the stall door, and who knows?
Yeah.
You're getting ready for bed, microwaving some food. Kirk shows up in the little timer.
Mm-hmm.
You see him. Yeah, you have to wonder. And there's there's that ritualistic instrument from the Ponfar ritual in the background there.
Oh, right.
That little the little geometric object with the little bells hanging off of it. There's a name for that I'm not recalling. I'm sure somebody will point that out for us.
Yeah, somebody's yelling at their listening device right now.
There it is over McCoy's shoulder. Pretty cool. And here's another really strange thing coming up right here that kind of struck me as odd.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Scotty drinks this stuff down.
Yeah.
No problem. But Spock is really skeptical of this liquid.
Yeah.
What is he thinking? Is he thinking he doesn't need it? Or is he thinking that McCoy is incompetent? Is he thinking it's poisonous?
Possibly, yeah. Or maybe he's being subdued.
Yeah, maybe McCoy is trying to take him out of command of the ship. See, this is really strange to me that Spock is so skeptical of this liquid. He's looking at it, and he's looking at McCoy, and waits for McCoy to drink it first, although he's just seen Scotty drink it.
Yeah.
So, very, very strange writing choice. Not sure what the goal of that was, but interesting nonetheless. So, Chekhov is back on the bridge, seemingly cured by the orange liquid that McCoy has come up with. So, one time bomb has been defused.
Yes.
So we still have the other time bombs. The Tholians are still building their web. Scotty almost has the Enterprise working again. So the second time bomb is close to being defused. But we still have Kirk's oxygen supply, which will come back into play again. And the Tholian's web is just about complete.
Mm-hmm.
And McCoy is standing by with Nurse Chapel in the transporter room with a hypo full of a substance that's supposed to, I guess, help Kirk get over his lack of oxygen.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be great if they could have had McCoy in two spots here, because they've got him up in the engineering, I guess, to do whatever mojo he needs up there. But you'd think you'd want him operating the transporter as well.
Oh, yeah. You would think. So it's interesting to have a no-name red shirt guy down there playing with the transporter trying to get Kirk back and not a major player.
Yeah.
Not a major player. But did you notice? Oh, here's a really great shot of the Enterprise flying in total blackness.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But did you notice that during the scene prior where McCoy was handing out the treatment in the glasses there, they actually name dropped the Klingons in this episode?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we were talking about continuity earlier with Chekhov's line about the mutiny, but I thought it was cool that they name dropped the Klingons and said it was actually made from a Klingon nerve gas.
Right.
So pretty cool that there was a little bit of continuity there where you heard about another recurring alien species, which doesn't really happen in the original series all that often.
Right.
They don't talk about aliens that are not in the actual episode for the most part. So pretty cool that the Klingons are gaining traction here. And I wonder if they had had a fourth or fifth or season and beyond, if we'd have seen those alien races recurring more and more, the Klingons and the Romulans.
Yeah, and you probably would have gotten a spin-off series.
Oh. Well,
Klingon Adventures or Romulan Adventures or whatever.
Gary 7 versus the Klingons. And now Kirk is on the viewport and in space.
Yeah, they have him in their tractor beam.
Pretty interesting. So that they've escaped the Tholian Web. So that is now a time bomb that has been defused, and we are trying to defuse the Kirk time bomb as we speak. Now, I love that the transporter controls are like a video game. You got dials and you got sliders and levers and stuff, and you got to do them in the right order in order to get that guy in. And there's Kirk, looking good.
Yeah.
None the worse for wear, it seems, and in a good mood.
Yeah.
Little smile from Shatner, and he is now back in the captain's chair. So very cool that we've diffused all the time bombs, and we have our now almost boilerplate comedic ending.
Yeah, where Kirk's explaining having the whole universe to himself, or a whole universe to himself, and he's inquiring how they did without him, and then he also asks them if they followed, or how it was to follow the orders that he left them in his vlog. And
they lie about it.
Yeah,
which I was kind of scratching my head about why they would. I mean, McCoy, sure, I can understand, but Spock, I'm not sure why he would feel the need to lie about it.
Yeah.
Are they trying to protect Kirk's feelings in some way? Or are they really trying to hide the fact that they had so many problems getting along without him? I'm not sure why the subterfuge was necessary.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, and it seems very out of character for Spock to lie like that so easily.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I recall Vulcans are incapable of lying, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that true? I don't know how well fleshed out that is in the original series, but I know that that's a thing that definitely happens in the movies, that Vulcans are incapable of lying. Especially in the sixth movie, doesn't they have a whole thing where he's exaggerating instead of lying? Yeah. Actually, in Star Trek 2, he did, too.
Yeah. Well, maybe Spock was able to use, since Kirk said the word taped or tape, and Spock knows that it wasn't done on tape.
Good call. It was actually a digital cartridge of some sort. Oh, well. So, episode is now over, and I guess we are at our essential voting time.
Yeah, and I think very much like last week, I think I'm going to go first just because I'm going to say, unless you can convince me otherwise, I don't think this is essential. I don't feel that the introductions of the Tholian race is enough here. I don't think the conflict between Spock and McCoy, which we've seen done before with Kirk and sort of out of the picture. And I don't really think there's any technology here. I know you mentioned the photon torpedoes usage, but there's nothing jumping out at me as being incredibly relevant in terms of making this essential. So unless you could convince me otherwise, I'm going not essential.
Oh, very interesting. Well, I don't know if I'll be able to convince you, but I will tell you that I do disagree. And I will be calling this episode essential, and pretty much for the introduction of the Tholians, who show up in every series except Voyager. So this is a major recurring alien race that come back quite a few times. And also this episode is a prequel, serves as a prequel for an episode in another Trek series. So we do see the Defiant ship again, and this forms the basis of the story for that Enterprise story arc. So I think those two things, I'm going to say, cause this episode to be essential for me.
All right, fair enough.
All right. So we have a split decision. We haven't had one of those in a while.
Yeah.
So pretty cool.
Yep.
And I guess we will be back next week for the controversial Plato's Stepchildren.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that should be interesting. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Yep.
Star Trek garnered an Emmy Award for this visually exciting episode. All the special effects came together in the Tholian Web, complete with excellent miniature works, animation, and even a manufactured alien being. Some of the effects were contributed by Mike Miner, who would later work on a few of the Star Trek motion pictures. Twice before, Kirk precariously straddled two universes. In the alternative factor, the parallel was a negative world where emotions were reversed, and in Mirror, Mirror, Kirk, along with Uhura and McCoy and Scotty, were thrown into a universe where evil ran rampant. If scientific theory evolves to the point where it can be proven that there are an infinite number of universes, who knows how many Shatners would be talking about the history of Star Trek right now? Bing, bong, boom, bang, boom. Too many.